6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Para todos este 2016. ¡Que viva Isabela!
In 2015, Billy Strong, a world-traveling artist and environmentalist from East Hampton, New York, visited the island of Isabela in the Galapagos, a volcanic archipelago off the coast of Ecuador. Billy's global travels had revealed to him an increasing trend of human garbage along coastal shorelines. In the Galapagos, he saw that areas otherwise untouched by humans were nonetheless covered by debris from merchant vessels and commercial ships, and by trash continually dumped into the oceans from the mainland. Deeply moved by this sad and ugly reality, Billy decided on a plan. He could use the Galapagos Isle of Isabela to represent to the world the glaring issue of waterborne garbage, even on a shore otherwise untouched by humans. With the help of a local environmentalist, Billy spent a year planning his return. His mission: to use his art to create and document a unique, life-saving message. This film documents an odious side of paradise, showing how the Galapagos Islands, widely known to exemplify pristine, untouched nature, are being relentlessly defiled. Artist Billy Strong and filmmaker Dell Cullum set out to reveal a scourge of our oceans, an ugliness which leaves no landmass untouched. Strong wanted to create, with spontaneous art, an alarm to share with the world. He and Cullum intended their work to benefit the people of the Galapagos, their National Park Service, and the essence of the islands. However, when attempts to get authorization failed, Strong proceeded in a more covert manner.
Okay, I'm on Isabela Island with my good friend Sebastian. I met Sebastian last year and we became good friends. Tell me a little bit about what makes Isabela so special, Sebastian.
Yes, Isabela, this island, as you know already, Billy, is so beautiful. It's untouched. We have flamingos, penguins, flightless cormorants. It's a beautiful place. This island, Isabela, we can say is the jewels of the crown of the Galapagos, because everything is here, just in this island. The problem that we have on the islands around the world of the debris. These islands are like a magnetic attraction for debris.
Most people back home, when they mention the Galapagos, they're like, oh, well, how do you stay there? I mean, they don't even know there's communities. They don't know there's a church. They don't know there's a school. They think it's just nothing. It's good for them to realize, hey, even this pristine place is getting affected by humans.
Yes.
What I wanted to try to do is I wanted to make these large sculptures around the island.
Very good.
As a warning to humans that, hey, this stuff can come alive in a beautiful way, but look at it. It can come alive, and it will destroy humans.
Yes.
If we keep doing it. Yes, it will.
We have to focus on good things that focus on nature, because nature is what gives us life. And we have to live in harmony with nature. All the animals, they live in harmony with nature, but not us. Not humans, man.
No.
And we have to begin living in harmony with nature.
Yeah.
Under cover of darkness, artist Billy Strong, photographer Dell Cullum, a boat captain, and two mates boarded the last original wooden fishing vessel in the Galapagos Islands. For their mission, they carried only enough equipment to document their non-sanctioned 14-day journey around Isabela.
By daybreak, we had sailed about 3 hours north. Billy immediately spotted debris on a small, isolated beach. We had Alvaro prepare the landing boat, and we launched to go ashore. No sooner did we pull away from our fishing boat than we turned and spotted an approaching vessel.
Coast Guard?
Exactly what we didn't want to have happen was happening within hours of leaving port.
So we had to anchor in a little cove, come out with a little boat, go along the coast with probably 6-foot waves. We couldn't land, so we had to go down the shore a little more. The problem is, like all islands in the world, debris is coming from every angle. It's an island. There's so much trash in the oceans that every island in the world is getting affected.
There were no trails to follow, no paths. These areas weren't easily accessible.
It was like walking along miles of razor blades. If you fell on this stuff, you were cut up. The boots that I had were just completely destroyed by the end of the trip. So you had to be very careful, and there were spots where it could collapse under you, and all of a sudden you're in a chasm.
It took an hour of extreme hiking to get to this location. We both had gear, we had water, the heat was extreme, but when we finally got to the shoreline, it was exactly what Billy had anticipated. Sadly, we found something big right away.
"75% of the debris was from ships, plastic containers from ships, cargo ships, fishing ships."
Doing this project around the beautiful island of Isabela was the perfect example to show that even the most pristine of locations is not immune to trash and debris.
As I'm collecting, something comes to mind. My work isn't about, I'm gonna go do a fisherman. It all comes from what I find, what I'm thinking. You know, when I'm hiking to find the materials, it's all about what I find. It's the process.
And you could see that in the first piece because you had found an old sling harpoon and the hose for a compression tank.
When I found the old bamboo sling, I was like, I'll make a fisherman. You know, it's all about the spontaneity, the environment, what I find there.
Billy's first sculpture, The Fisherman, was complete. The process of collecting and creating the work of art had taken 4 hours. Billy and Dell also collected several bags of debris and carried them back to the boat. The trash they collected would be stored below deck to be disposed of when they returned to the port on Isabela. On Isabela, trash and debris are dumped in a vast designated lava field. Billy and Dell mutually decided between two evils. Their collected trash would be better hidden in a lava field than left in a living ocean.
The location that the captain decided to drop anchor was a surprise to me. The seas were kind of choppy and we were rocking already. It was a warning to what we were about to go through that evening.
Day 1 had been a success. Billy had not expected to complete a sculpture inside of 12 hours from port. However, the dangers and hard work involved were now more clearly defined and would aid and instruct the entire crew as they proceeded through the expedition. The overnight was rough. After a beautiful sunset, the wind picked up enough to create boat-rocking waves that rolled until dawn. No one managed to get much sleep. At noon, the captain shut down the engines and drifted while he prepared lunch. Billy and Dell took this opportunity to do some snorkeling around a nearby reef. Dell took his underwater camera.
Dell and I were swimming, looking at the fish, taking a few photographs, and all of a sudden, a small orca arrives, which was very interesting. And then 3 other big ones arrived, which became terrifying. I noticed and pointed down that they were feeding on a giant manta ray. So I figured, all right, well, they got some food. Maybe we'll stay a few more minutes. But then we realized it wasn't SeaWorld. That manta ray was almost gone and they still might be hungry, so it might be time to get out of the water.
As they continued their journey, the team members were anxious about what lay ahead. Soon after setting sail, Billy spotted a large area of unique landscape. He called to set anchor and prepared to go ashore.
It's just beautiful just walking around the terrain. I mean, you don't get that anywhere in the world like that. That one spot was Galapagos.
At the top, they realized the odd landscape was formed by the remains of 2 extinct volcanic vents.
We were probably the first people to walk on that in 100 years, maybe forever. It was just not a place that people went.
Untouched and pristine landscape stretched as far as the eye could see. Determined to get a second sculpture completed by day's end, Billy flagged the landing boat and descended back to the pickup point. Back at sea level, Billy immediately found trash, placed on the shore by the sea, placed in the sea by humans. Billy collected a few interesting pieces of debris for a smaller piece he envisioned. Billy and Dell also collected a couple bags of debris for disposal and loaded them below deck. A hike to the rim of an extinct volcanic vent, a shoreline cleaned of its smothering debris, and the day had just begun.
We pulled into this huge bay where the lava flow turned into mangrove fields that went back into these narrow fingers. It was almost difficult for me to absorb all the things I was seeing all around us in Perry Bay. Shore and seabirds, the sea turtles. At one point, I was even looking off into the distance. I watched an 8-foot shark jump 6 feet out of the water. We all turned to each other on the boat, looking and saying, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And we all did. And it was pretty amazing. I knew at that point this spot was surely paradise and the perfect spot for Billy to build his next piece.
And it was a perfect spot for a siren because, you know, the cove, luring them into a dead end, you know, up on the rocks, moving, you know, luring them into the Perry Bay. Those are things I think about when I get to the site and I'm hiking. And what is this environment here? What could it be saying or needing or wanting?
The siren was complete. The day had been long and difficult. The team decided to stay in the bay overnight. The team collected a few more bags of debris to haul back to the boat, leaving the landscape as unsullied as they could. The siren remained behind, left to invite future cleanup crews. The crew left the bay at sunrise with calm seas and endless blue skies. Billy was looking for a unique and difficult location for his next piece and instructed the captain to continue north until early afternoon. The terrain appeared much more challenging as they continued north. During long boat rides, Billy worked on a small sculpture using debris he had collected from the main street back in port. After hours of northward travel, Billy spotted another pair of orcas and decided to look for a possible landing site. Three frigate birds began to circle the boat and then flew off toward a very small beach. It seemed an ideal spot to stop. So they thought.
That was probably one of the longest legs that we sailed before we took a break.
Captain called it Beach of the Dead. He anchored the vessel a good distance from shore and asked that the landing boat not touch the land. Billy would have to walk onto the beach from the water. Billy waded onto the white sand beach. After a short walk south along the dangerous terrain, he came upon a large accumulation of debris. It was there that he would create his next piece, and his physical limits would be tested.
There was about every type of animal on that beach dead.
This was a strong zone for accumulation. Both death and debris lined the shore. Scavenging frigate birds circled above the well-named beach.
The terrain was really hostile and the heat was terrible, unbearable.
There was no margin for error when traversing this landscape. With no hospitals, one trip or a stumble or one misstep could end this expedition.
The FRIGATEBIRD was complete and ready to be raised. This piece had taken hours to create. The team hadn't realized how much faster their water ration would be used in such arid conditions, and their containers ran dry before the piece was done. Billy was drenched with sweat and needed to rehydrate soon.
We didn't bring enough water, and it was hotter than hell. And the wind was blowing against the cape of the frigate's wings, but you were trying to push it, and we had been there for hours, and the heat and lack of water.
It almost took me over.
It almost blew you backwards.
I needed water. I needed to rest. I needed to get out of the sun. You know, it was a Dr. Frankenstein moment, you know, where your creation almost kills you.
The sculpture was tall and heavy, made of large wooden pieces. Billy was weakening, and the coastal winds were strong. His first attempt to raise the sculpture failed. He tried a second time. The exhausted team had neither time nor energy to clean this beach of death. The debris seemed endless. Billy gathered his tools and a few items to use in his next piece.
I think we were so exhausted at that point, we looked at all that trash and said, there's nothing we can do here. We were lucky to get back to the boat.
Nobody's ever been on this beach. Nobody probably will be again. It's not easy to get to where we went, and nobody else is going to do this.
By the time he returned to the boat, Billy was badly dehydrated and suffering minor effects of heat exhaustion. The captain was anxious to leave the area. They continued north. Just a few hours north, and the crew was at the equator. Billy landed on a small beach a few hundred yards south of the equator, at the foot of Wolf Volcano, which had recently erupted in May of 2015. He would build his fourth sculpture on the east coast of Isabela, in the freshly hardened lava flow. The beauty of the landscape was mesmerizing, unlike anything they had seen before. Until they landed on it.
You look at the landscape, and there's this beautiful volcano that erupted a few months earlier, and just rivers of lava coming down through the green of the volcano. And then you go to the shore, and it's a debris field of garbage. And you wonder, well, if this is the most pristine place in the world, and this is happening here, you can just imagine what's happening elsewhere.
The sun's heat was extreme and quickly drained energy from the body. Billy began to build his sculpture on the equator.
It was a challenge, physically and mentally.
Then I remember it almost slipped and crowned you on the top of the head. You caught it just in time. And it was funny because it was a totem full of hard hats.
Every time I completed the sculpture, Dell and I and the crew made sure that we took at least a big bag of stuff with us, as much as we could, to put in the hold of the fishing boat. Not only making the sculptures and making a point with that, we still wanted to try to take as much back to the recycling area on the island, back to the village. And we did that and took a boatload of stuff off. It was better when we left than when we came. Unfortunately, it was impossible for us to take everything off of the sites. There was just too much of it and beyond our resources. But we did what we could. That's all any of us can do.
It had been another long and difficult day. The totem was complete, marking both the equator and the worst debris field on the east coast of Isabela Island. The team picked up much of the debris around the totem sculpture and filled the remaining storage area below deck on the boat. Their debris removal limit had been reached, with only a third of their journey complete. Billy had already built 4 of his planned 5 sculptures. Being well ahead of schedule, it was time to take a much-needed break. The captain first had to navigate the crew around some very large waves. Rough seas made filming difficult and dangerous as they rounded the northernmost point of Isle Isabela.
I put the camera on the boat and I was taking pictures of the waves breaking on the shore.
And you got some good ones.
I almost went overboard. At that point, we rounded the north.
Yes.
At which time
It was
we
beautiful.
started hitting some big waves.
We anchored in that one little spot, but for some reason on both sides of us were 30-foot breakers. But obviously the captain knew what he was doing.
That's what I'm talking about.
Once around the point, the crew was able to anchor in a small, relatively calm bay lined with a black sand beach. Just to the west was another area creating large swells. The crew spent a rough and sleepless night in between the monster swells. The flies and mosquitoes were ruthless. As the captain rounded Ecuador Volcano, they began to head south along the western coastline, soon crossing the equator for a second time. The rough seas of the day before had damaged a bolt in the overworked engine. The captain needed a calm location to repair it and knew a perfect spot close by.
I will admit, I was a bit nervous when he said that bolt broke in the engine. He pulled out this box of bolts, poured it on the deck. Half of them were bent and rusted, the other half were stripped, and I'm not sure what they were.
They anchored in a little cove hidden by towering volcanic cliffs and caves, with a spectacular landscape and crystal clear waters teeming with marine life. This was a magical place. day's end, the boat was repaired and the crew rested. The team decided to spend the night in this little cove. The gleam of the sunset reflected off the south cliff wall onto the water, turning it bright orange. The crew had successfully advanced to the halfway point of Billy's planned journey. He was a day ahead of schedule and had only one more life-size sculpture to create. The crew slowly sailed south along the western coastline, spotting no accumulated debris. Then, another bolt broke in the engine and the crew was forced to stop. The captain found a wonderful spot for Billy to explore while the boat underwent repairs. With Ecuador volcano towering in the background, a strong, peaceful energy was clearly felt.
We stopped along the west coast of Isabela at first to have a little R&R. When I got back to the cove, making the sea creature seemed to naturally happen.
The captain came on shore to personally let Billy know the boat was fixed and ready to continue the journey. Back at sea, another orca appeared and followed the boat for a while. The landscape continued to shift from one amazing scene to another. For the first time in the journey, clouds blocked out the sun. A light mist of precipitation filled the air. The captain anchored for the night in a small, calm cove. They had traveled a long distance. Billy went ashore to take a walk on the beach. Billy was pleased to find no debris on the beach. He wondered if this trend would continue as the crew prepared for a special leg of the expedition. The crew spent most of the day circling Fernandina Island. They found no debris and no safe landing. They anchored off of Fernandina for the night. Billy wanted to get onto the island's shore and set out to do so. Billy found a small black sand beach to land on, but only by foot due to sharp rocks. As Billy was preparing to jump in and walk to shore, a large Galapagos shark appeared next to the boat. Billy waded onto Fernandina, stepping onto a virgin shore. Almost immediately, dark clouds began to surround the sun, and the wind speed increased. As the water became choppy, the captain signaled Billy and motioned for his return. By nightfall, the rain stopped and the skies cleared. The crew left Fernandina and sailed south, hugging the shoreline in search of debris. After a few hours of no luck, the crew anchored in a calm bay, and Billy went ashore to beautiful finger-like peninsulas of lava and mangrove, reaching out to the sea.
Okay, we're on the western side of Isabela, but over here they keep it pretty clean. So I'm going around and just trying to find as much as I can to make this final piece. We're well into our second week, and it's been great, but it's a little tough on us being on this boat and trying to get everything done. On the west coast of the island, there was little debris. The national park keeps this area clean as the tourists visit this area.
Back on the boat, Billy immediately began to build his final piece, using debris he collected both on shore and over the past days. The west coast of Isabela gets the majority of offshore tourism. The National Park Service, along with local fishermen who receive incentives for participation, conduct yearly coastal cleanups that keep the visible, yet restricted shoreline looking beautiful. The less visible area beyond the tidal line and the entire east coast get little or no attention. These areas of accumulated trash are growing bigger and bigger, consuming the beaches and shorelines.
Every island in the world has this problem. Stuff just comes from the sea. You know? Here we are in our second week on this boat. Trying to make something happen. Large sculptures that I'm making around this island as warning. It's a warning because this trash is going to come alive one day and it's going to kill all the humans. Here in this, look at this, the Galapagos. Most pristine place in the world just about, and there's trash all over it. Not so much on this side because all the tourists come here and the national parks come here and clean it up to make it look good. If you go over these volcanoes, to the eastern side, it's loaded. This is going to be my mermaid. It's my fifth and most likely last large piece. And she's coming together pretty quick. This is also the first piece I'm making on the boat because I haven't been able to find enough in one spot, so I've been collecting it. And the other four pieces I made on site because on the other side of the island there's so much debris that it wasn't a problem. So, in a way, they are trying to do their best, I guess, but they're doing it just so the tourists think it's nice. It's the same way where we live. We live in paradise too, and people trash it. Come out there and do whatever they want, trash it. No respect. Everywhere I've been in the world is the same thing. All these places everybody wants to go. Most beautiful places in the world. You get there and it's just trashed. So I'm trying to show people that we can change it a little at a time. Just through education and art. Now we made our little angel to watch over this place and guard it. She's one of my guardians. She's coming along. And we keep doing the same thing, not changing. So, in my small way, I'm trying to help it. And I'm finding myself at the same time, making my art. That's what most artists do, I guess, right? Try to find themselves. What a place to find it. Galapagos. I would suggest you all come and check it out because there's a lot more good than there is bad for now.
Another rough, boat-rocking night made for a slow start. The sea, the sun, and the hard work were beginning to take a toll. The crew was 2 days ahead of schedule, getting closer to the southern coast and to the roughest seas of Isabela. Billy's concern was to find a perfect location to place the final large piece before reaching the extreme southern coast. The same engine bolt broke again. The captain was forced to anchor on the spot for repairs. Billy decided to go ashore to get off the rocking boat, although the lava flow landscape appeared uninviting. Below the towering volcano Sierra Negra, Billy contemplated cutting the 14-day expedition to 12. He returned to the boat, determined to get his final piece standing by day's end tomorrow. Back on the boat, Billy went topside to work on his journal. His new plan and positive outlook lifted the spirits of the entire crew. Suddenly, the captain spotted an approaching vessel.
Hurry, 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 hurry. We're going.
If other fishermen were to see Billy and Dell on board, they might alert the authorities and abort the expedition. The captain motioned Billy and Dell to get below deck.
Can you put the top down?
Because the hull was full of bagged debris, they had to hide, sweltering in the engine compartment.
It's better than not being able to do this project, because it took me a year to arrange it, covertly, without their knowledge. So they'll be gone in a few minutes and we'll be on our way again and might have to hide again. It's hot down here in the engine room.
False alarm. The boat was occupied by 3 local fishermen. The captain traded with the men, exchanging a few lobsters for fresh fruit and bread. The fishermen went on their way. The crew decided to remain anchored. Tomorrow would be an important day and everyone needed to rest. The captain set sail just as the sun rose. He began to round the wide southwest point of Isabela. The landscape was magnificent. A few hours later, the captain anchored in a cove surrounded by giant cliffs covered with green foliage. Caves and huge boulders lined the water's edge, alive with marine iguanas, penguins, and fur seals. Galapagos hawks circled in the sky above. This was the perfect location for Billy's final sculpture. This spot is used as a landing by hunters of wild pig who trek from the shore to the isolated backcountry. A flat boat landing was chiseled into the lava, above which was a tent-like shelter for hunters or fishermen. As Billy knew, where there are people, there is trash. He was right. As Billy gathered debris to finish his final sculpture, a misty rain filled the air. From a high point, Billy turned to determine his distance from the boat. He was shocked to see the same 3 fishermen who had visited the day before. They were tying onto the captain's boat. Hiding was no longer an option. After gathering some debris, Billy returned to the boat and met the visitors.
Yeah, the fishermen, they started throwing their things on board with an entitlement attitude. I let it slide for a little bit, and then I talked to the captain about it. And he said they want to get out of the rain, they want to make some food, and when the weather clears up, they'll get off. There was one of them that I had a bad feeling about. You could tell he didn't like the fact that we were on board. He was jealous of the captain making money from not having to fish.
Billy had found a perfect location for the mermaid, a short boat ride away, to the right of a huge cave opening.
Don't fall, Billy.
The final piece had been placed, completing Billy's artistic objective and marking the heavy debris areas around Isabela and Fernandina. It was time to celebrate the team's success and to prepare for the final leg of the expedition.
Not too bad. Up to a cliff, and he overlooked over the cliff. He looked down, and it was a highway. And then he looked on the ground, and it was filled with debris and trash and all kinds of stuff. And then it went up to his face, and he saw a tear going down his face. And I'll never forget that. That's a moment that I realized, even as a little boy, how such a problem we have with the way we treat our environment. So, I want to be that American Indian on that horse. I want to go around the world and help people figure that out. And that's the Green Explorer's mission.
The crew had a festive meal with their guests. In spite of the communication barrier, they were able to explain to them what they were trying to accomplish. Two of the men expressed gratitude for Billy caring about their home. The third fisherman said very little. They all stayed the night. Billy woke early and watched the crescent moon as it set, a bright red smile tinted by dawn's earliest light. It was amazing. After the beautiful sunrise disappeared into clouds, the visitors cast off and the crew got underway. They sailed east along the southern coast, and the sea began to roar. After hours of rough sailing, the crew was exhausted. The captain anchored in a calm, secluded cove. Everyone rested. This was the crew's last stop. Because their journey was not authorized, they had to wait until dark to enter port. They could not risk getting caught. As the captain turned the boat toward home, they all watched the final sunset of the journey. Billy and Dell had their gear packed and on board the launching vessel. The crew was about 3 hours from home port. Billy finished his small piece and introduced Darwin. The crew arrived at the harbor under the cover of darkness. A huge feeling of relief was shared by the entire crew. The crew had come a long way. The expedition had accomplished its purpose, and Billy's artistic achievements had been well documented. It is their hope that their message will be passed around the world. Finally at port, the captain anchored while Billy and Dell boarded the small boat. They had just a 3-minute ride from here to there.
The port is in sight. We get into the landing boat with all our equipment, and we breathe a huge sigh of relief as we pull away from the fishing boat for the last time. All of a sudden, lights lit up the dark.
Apaguen los motores. ¿Dónde está su capitán?
And they didn't look happy. They looked less than happy.
Y vengan de vuelta al barco.
Remember the 3 fishermen that Billy and the captain had sheltered from the rain and shared a meal with? The quiet one had indeed contacted the authorities and turned in the captain, Billy, and his team. The authorities searched the boat and found it loaded with the debris the crew had collected.
They made a call to the commander, and the commander said, hey, these guys are okay. They went out and did something good. They weren't going out and destroying things. They weren't doing anything but trying to make our place better, bring attention to it, and maybe have more people come and clean up the beaches. So sure enough, after a few minutes, they released us. And the best is when we're finally going back to shore at the end, and I give Felipe the knife as a present. And he opens it up, takes it out of the wrapper, takes it out of the box, and looks and goes, wow. And then he throws the box and the plastic into the water.
We thought we all had an understanding, but apparently it slipped.
Obviously there was more work to be done. By bypassing the national parks, I meant no disrespect. I wanted to go and help them, and I think that bringing attention to the problem of their being under-resourced, not being able to go to the east side of the island and clean, is because of the funds that the government isn't giving them. Now, if I can meet with the president of Ecuador and show him this film, maybe they'll get more money to the national parks.
In my opinion, this place is paradise, and I hope through Billy's art and the message and the film that we can help keep Isabela and all the Galapagos Islands to remain paradise. That would be my hope.